Welcome to the My Business Podcast, where we sit down with local businesses and we talk about who they are, where they come from, and what inspires them to be in business.
Hello and welcome to the My Business Podcast. My name is Adam Bell and I'm your host. And today here with me in the studio is Helen Frances for a two-part series. We're going to do two very interesting episodes here with Helen today. So the name of Helen's business is Kolibricura. Did I get that right?
Pretty much. Kolibricura, yes. But it's pronounced however you want to really pronounce it. But
well, welcome to the studio. Maybe start by telling us what Kolibricura
yes. So
means, because I know it's got a meaning.
I've just rebranded the business to the name Kolibricura. So Kolibri in German and Finnish and Danish and a few other European countries means hummingbird. And hummingbird in traditional Peruvian culture means the messenger between the earth and the heavens.
Wow.
And cura is Latin for care. So it's around being the messenger of care or the caring messenger, being able to support others in their growth and their journey.
I love that. That's fantastic. Now, you've got a pretty amazing story, I believe. Would you mind maybe sharing, to start us off, share a little bit about that and where you've come from?
Okay. So originally I was born, but I was born. Originally, I was born.
Okay.
But I was born out of an affair. So my mum also had me at a lot older, 45, but back in the 80s, that was quite uncommon. And so being raised, I ended up creating belief structures around that I shouldn't exist because adultery is considered a sin and everything like that. And so I didn't have a traditional relationship or upbringing with the father around because he was with his other family. I found out from a very young age through just being curious and him not being around like normal parents. And so there was a whole range of beliefs and things that arose from that. And then as I went into teenagehood, that led to depression, suicidal tendencies, and a whole plethora of other stuff that just spiraled me down. I've always been a larger girl, so back in the 90s, the fashion was very, very thin girls, and so that was not me. So that contributed to those mental health issues in that space. And then and also it affected my relationships with men because I didn't have any really good examples of how relationships should be. And so originally all I wanted was to get into a relationship, have a family, because I felt that would fix all of my issues. So from that I kind of started doing a little work. I moved to Tasmania chasing a boy, and once that sort of so once that relationship started to break down or it wasn't really lining, a girlfriend got me into some energy healing work, which was sort of my real start of looking at myself and kind of peeling back all the layers of things that I'd put on because the depression of that had led to lots of addictions for me. Really easy to mask and hide away by going out partying and socialising and drinking.
As a lot of people do.
Numbing it with drugs as well. And, you know, that did work, but it didn't actually solve any of the issues. It's a bit like at times taking lots of painkillers. That's not actually solving the issue of what's causing the pain.
Sure.
So I started doing the work through the energy work in Tasmania, which led me into some coaching stuff through one of the people doing training there. My life from a career perspective previously was in admin for state governments. And then 2020, at the start of 2020, on the 29th of February, I flew out to Costa Rica and undertook a plant medicine journey for the first time. My mum had passed away. My dad had passed away when I was 19, so never sort of resolved those things. So it was just me. So I went to South America and experienced my first plant medicine of ayahuasca, which showed me some amazing insights and revelations. And from there, I started doing more work in the coaching space for my own development to really, to be able to heal and fix what I thought needed fixing. And through that, just that knowledge and and clearing through those things, it's led me to down this path and moving up the Sunshine Coast and having the space to be able to kind of help or facilitate space for others to grow and on their journey.
Sure. And I now know it's sort of men's mental wellness that you specialise in and something you have a passion for. Was there something that happened along the way? Was there a turning point that led you down that particular path?
Yeah, so there's sort of several factors. Having been raised by an exceptionally strong, independent female, and a lot of her friends were very strong, independent females as well, I was given that. I was blessed with that ability and a lot of and seeing the work that had been done for women, the support for the growth, which over the last 100 years has definitely needed to happen. But what that's meant is that women have grown in a particular way, but also men haven't had that same focus on, okay, so who are men? What are they? And so the traditional enculturated roles for men are no longer kind of the same as they were, because women are now able to provide for themselves.
Sure.
And then just noticing and starting to see the stats of the men's suicide, which is 3 out of 4 suicides are men.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's the biggest leading death of men under age of 35. And the loneliness stats, I think I saw somewhere recently, it was 63% of men have experienced loneliness in their life. And so really from a selfish perspective, it's around supporting men's growth so that they can be the men for the women who've done the work on that side, but also because in order for humanity to really grow and evolve, it's not just one sex or the other sex. We're there too. And look, men are needed. I know.
There might be a few women out there who don't agree with you.
There are some, I'm sure, that don't necessarily agree and think we can. And yes, women can do anything and everything, but I think from the dynamic of who we are as a race and as an animal species, men and women are very much needed for the evolution of humanity and basically for if humanity is going to survive moving forward. We need both men and women to work together
and be
around
healthy,
that. Yeah,
mentally and otherwise. Look, many people, but especially men, can be very hesitant to seek help for mental and emotional challenges. What would you say to someone, especially a man out there who's on the fence, thinking about reaching out? What advice could you give them?
Oh, look. So one of the things, a bit of backtrack, men don't tend to seek help like women do. And again, that's partly the enculturated society beliefs of men have been taught a lot from their forefathers that boys don't cry. Just pick yourself up. Just keep going. Just keep going. You'll be right. You'll be right. You don't need to talk about it. If you show weakness, it means you're vulnerable, which means then you can be shut down and weak and you won't, succeed in life. So I think that's one of the core reasons why a lot of men don't do that. Also out of shame and fear out of shame, which is why they don't necessarily talk to their partners. They don't want to be seen as less. I think for men, the key message to do is really to look and find somewhere or something that's actually going to work for you, because it is different for everybody else. Not all guys want to sit and talk around a campfire and talk in a men's group, and a lot of misperceptions around that as well. So you don't have to dance around naked around a fire, drumming a drum, embracing your sacred femininity. Like that's not what it's about uncovering and learning about oneself. It also means you don't necessarily have to go to the extreme where it's like females need to get back in the kitchen and be this particular way, because that's not who females are nowadays. No. And that's ultimately, there are some females who are interested in that, and that's totally up to them. And you can be either one of those if you choose to be, but that there's so much more to guys and men that, you can do that. But yes, biggest thing is find your tribe, and that may not be the first people you look at. Build your team as a bit of a footy team, is what we call it, or my psychologist calls it. It's like we sit on the sidelines, but when you need us on the field, we're there to come up. So build a strong group, and that can be a whole range of different stuff. And so, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another in that way.
Sure. Can you explain to me what what's the difference between mental health, mental illness, and mental wellness?
Okay, so mental health is the overarching thing that we talk about when we talk about how our minds are operating and working and our thinking patterns and our beliefs and our values. So mental health can be healthy or it can be unhealthy. Mental illness is when you have illnesses such as more around like heavy long-term depression. It can be schizophrenia, your bipolars and everything like that. So that's mental illness.
And that affects where you're on the scale of mental health.
Yes. So if there's something mentally, and there's chronic long-term conditions or ongoing forever, there's temporary ones. So people can have bouts of loneliness and depression and come through those. Unlike some other illnesses where it's a lifelong maintenance of stuff, say such as schizophrenia as an example. Whereas mental wellness is about doing things that help improve one's mental health. So that hopefully avoid mental illness going forward. So it's a bit like if you were to exercise and eat healthy so that your body is in a better position to last longer in that.
And ward off any illnesses.
And physical illnesses.
Sure.
So it's the same sort of stuff. So mental wellness can encompass a lot of stuff. It can encompass exercise. It encompasses having connections with others. It's around mental wellness is looking at understanding one's own thinking patterns and how they serve and how they don't serve one, and understanding oneself and who they are in society and around, and the actions that one takes to do mental wellness. So for me, as an example, part of my mental wellness is having a coach, usually sometimes multiple. But I also have a psychologist. I have my energy person that I go and see, and that's not for everybody. That's my things. I also have my girlfriends, certain ones that I talk to about certain topics and things like that. And so for me, building those and making sure that they're in play and working through those is the mental wellness to help try and avoid mental illness as much as possible, so that overall your mental health is doing well.
You've explained that really well, because you hear all those terms a lot these days. I hadn't even really given it much thought about how they all intertwine and relate and what each one means, but you've explained that very well. Helen, you emphasise, a lot the importance of self-awareness and self-actualisation for especially those in influential positions. Why do you believe this is crucial for societal evolution?
Well, being aware of oneself and one's patterns and that one operates from, and that includes your values, your beliefs, memories, and anything that arises within, even emotions. To be aware of those, self-aware of those, means that's this very first starting point of actually taking back control of one's life and being able to control one's thinking, one's feeling, one's actions and what they say, because they're really the four things in life that one actually has control and power over. So by becoming aware of that, that's actually taking those initial steps around the thinking. Self-actualisation is actualising oneself to their fullest potential. So really working with those patterns and those underlying core belief structures that make up somebody's personality, and really identifying and taking control back of where it's being resourceful, where it's not being resourceful for where one wants to go, and basically taking them, waking up, which is your self-awareness, cleaning up in order to wake up and grow up, essentially. And so, that's where it comes from. And the more one becomes aware and self-actualized, the greater one is able to see multiple perspectives and have flexibility in their life to be able to adjust as context requires.
Sure. With your unique perspective that, you bring to the table with this, how do you think our upbringing shapes, our mental framework? How much of it is environment?
Ultimately, environment plays a factor until it's no longer required, because it is all an internal work. However, the way that children and babies learn is through modelling.
Yep.
And so they model their parents, they model their siblings around them, they model their whole community that around them. And so you can model it either way. So, for example, if you have a parent who's, say, an alcoholic, your child may become an alcoholic themselves by modelling them in that direction, or they may be so averse to alcohol because they've seen and that. So it's really how children interpret the world are based on what they model and what they see. So they kind of, everything's been handed to you. So all your beliefs and all your patterns have been handed to you, which is why people from different cultures don't necessarily understand each other, because they have different frameworks around how they operate.
From the day they're put onto the earth.
Yes, so basically from that day you're learning, and then what happens from the age of 7 or 8, we have what's called our meta programs, or our cognitive biases. They get pretty much locked into place. And what our brains then do is looks to reinforce those patterns, because it's a way to protect and look at so it worked in a particular way. So that's how it plays out in our lives. And so as we go along, we can either kind of what we call fall asleep to them and just do our work and like, oh, that's just who I am. That's how, it's just my luck and that. But that's our brain and how it works. So taking back control of that and understanding, going, okay, that's due to this from a nurturing perspective that I didn't feel like I received. So I react this way to gain love or something like that.
Sure. Look, it's really interesting and fascinating what you talk about, and it's making me understand a whole lot more. Tell me a bit about the services you do offer, whether it be men or other clients in this area.
Okay, so I've just launched a men's group up on the Sunshine Coast. So that will be monthly containers for men to be able to share, to start to do a bit more reflective work for themselves.
That could be them finding their tribe?
That could be them finding their tribe. But yeah, it's really about men being able to sit around and open up and share what's going on for them to help try and, even a small portion, help some alleviate some loneliness or get a greater understanding from other men. I have one-to-one services, so I do have I always offer an initial session because integral coaching isn't necessarily for everyone or my style of how I operate. So it's really important that people understand that process before committing because not everybody's ready to peel back the layers and go deep and understand.
I gather that's a common thing. You've got to be ready to, with any kind of self-improvement. Yes.
Oh, exactly. Because I facilitate the space. I don't give you the answers. It's all the client does all the work. But yeah, so I have a six session package intro, but then I also have ongoing monthly sessions depending on what people desire or want at the level of support and the number of sessions and the additional support around that as well.
But having an initial free consultation with you would be the way to work out what you have, what you've got to offer, what potentially somebody needs, and where it may or may not fit with what you offer.
Exactly, yes. So it's really understanding what the client needs and what I'm able to offer as to how that works.
Fantastic. Yeah. Tell me about a success story. Tell me about, not using any names, but someone you've worked with and where you've seen, huge growth through, you being able to coach them through whatever they've been going through.
It can be very subtle sometimes.
But they can make the biggest differences.
Oh, exactly. So I think for me, the thing I love is because I get myself out of the way in coaching sessions. So I have a tendency not to recall intimate things about sessions because I'm really there. I'm really there with the client in the moment of what's going on. But the biggest thing I really love is asking someone a question about a particular topic that gets them to think about it a particularly different way.
Sure.
And seeing their face just shift.
Gives them literally a change of mindset in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And pointing that out to them. And whether it's not, sometimes it's just like, oh, wow, that's really great. Other times it's just like, oh, fuck. But being able to point out those things. So really pointing out one example is with somebody who has a tendency to just achieve, to do, keep going, keep doing all those sorts of things. Meanwhile, all these other facets of their life are falling down. And so for them, the realization was understanding that although they may be appearing successful, they may feel like they're getting somewhere, they're actually avoiding what really needed to happen. And so they were kind of a bit of a hamster on a wheel, just keep chewing, get going.
Which I'm sure so many.
And just like, oh, it'll be right once I get over the hill. Once I finish this project, or once I get this job done, or once I earn this much money, this will mean this. And instead kind of actually slowing down. And so by being able to see how they were utilizing their work in that way, and it was driving them from an external perspective in that, and then being able to pull back inwards and start to look, it then was able to shift their relationships with their partner and with those around them. And not only that, but with themselves.
Fantastic. Look, this is part one of a two-part podcast interview that we are going to do. I want to give you a question now that will probably lead into part two. You've trained with some leading experts in various fields, from NLP and plant medicine, like you mentioned earlier. Tell me about a technique or a method, that has had significant impact on your coaching style.
It would have to be what I call, what's called the quadrants, which ties in with integral theory work. And the quadrants are really looking at things from 4 perspectives. And we'll go quite deep into it, but there's first, second, third, and fourth person perspective, and each of those aligns with stages of development and interior and exterior forces, as well as individual and collective, and so they all play out. And that structure can actually be applied over anything, so it can be applied over any sort of business model, anything that kind of works with humans and everything like that, not just from a coaching perspective.
Right.
So it's a really powerful tool to look at things from multiple perspectives.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'm really looking forward to doing a deep dive into that in part 2 of this interview. But look, for anyone listening with this, especially men, who's maybe some of this has resonated with and would like to have a chat with you. And I want to make the point too, having had a good chat with you, we had lunch before we did this. From a guy's perspective, you can be yourself with Helen. You want to swear, you want to, she deals with men and she knows what men are like, and men are men. And, in coaching, don't feel as though you're coming in and you're sitting in front of a psychologist where, there's these protocols and there's sort of, behaviour you've got to exhibit. Helen is Helen, and she wants you to be you. And, for any man who's out there, and look, I've had my struggles with mental I've now got to get the term right with my mental health.
Mental health, yes.
Leading more towards and it's gone up and down, and
and it will. Your mental health does go up and down. Yep. And just on that note, thank you for your words. But it really is, for me, I'm here to create the space, to facilitate the space for people to be able to be who they are, so that they could actually look at themselves and look inwards and have that safe space to be able to do that. Yeah. And that's really what I'm here for. No. I'm kind of just providing the space.
That's really what I'm trying to say here. And, a man may think when they're going to someone to help with their mental health that, they need to be or portray someone with you. Absolutely not. You be yourself, and you're used to that, and you will help them. So where do they get in touch, Helen? How does someone get in touch with you?
My website, which you can goes multiple at the moment. So there's Helen Frances Coaching, which will lead to the same site as kolibricura.com.au, which I will spell.
Spell that for me.
KOLIBRI CURA.com.au. It's still remembering it off the top of my head as well. But if you search for Helen Frances Coaching, I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn. Also on Facebook page. But so
jump in,
find me anywhere.
Book a session and have a chat. And if you need any help at all, I'd highly recommend jumping in there and seeing what Helen can do for you. But thank you. That is the end of part 1, and everyone jump on. There is a second episode coming, and have a listen to part 2, where we will delve into a whole different area. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.